So this is a video for, any small business owner that has gotten the sticker shock from their payroll provider, figuring out that they're going to be paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month for payroll service. And you're like, can I just do this myself? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Not only can you do payroll yourself, you are responsible for the numbers that end up coming out of this and the deposits that get made to the government. And you are completely responsible regardless of whether or not you have a payroll provider. That's the dirty little secret about payroll providers is even though they're supposed to be remitting the money for you and getting it right, you're still ultimately responsible, even if they don't do it or do it wrong. So it's good to know it yourself. And this video is going to talk about how you transition your current payroll, the way you're running it, and get your information into this file for 2023 so that you can use it going forward, and all of your annual reports and everything will be good for the business for the entire calendar year of 2023. So we're going to use Mississippi as the example state. I have all 50 states functional, but I trimmed down the Excel version for just your state and just your business situation whenever you purchase one from me, so that it's easier and smaller file and easier for you to use. So we're going to talk about Mississippi, and we're going to talk about how to get your current payroll information in here in a couple categories that might not be exactly matching your totals, and I'll explain why. So first thing, let's get into the employee info sheet. Need to enter in information for your employees. Name, you can put social security number or not, doesn't matter. If you want to keep it in there, the last 4 digits or something, you can do that. You need to choose which W-4 they're using. If you want them to be using a 2020 or later W-4, if not, you're going to answer the questions from the old W-4, but try to get your employees to fill out a new one. They're supposed to be using it at this point. We're way past COVID, way past 2020. Let's get going with the new W-4. So there's a whole other video about the W-4, and that relates to the areas over here. We're not going to talk about it in this video, but you would answer these questions related to the W-4. Is the person married? Yes or no? What state are they in? I guess you want to do married yes here, if both spouses work. So the basically you choose whether or not they're married, choose the state, which is going to be Mississippi. Then here you have what's called the line 6 form 89,350 as a dollar amount. What that is that's the employee Missouri employee withholding exemption certificate that you need to have your employee fill out. They're going to answer the question up here about what status they are. And the answer to that question is going to go right here under state filing status. You have Missouri single, Missouri, let's go back to the single example. Married, no. And then you have another question besides the filing status. You have the question about dependents and age and blindness. And you're going to answer these questions. And this is going to be a dollar amount. It's not going to be a 1 or 2 or 3. It's going to be 1,500, 3,000, 4,500, whatever it is. And that's the total that goes down here as number 6. And sorry, it's not this. You don't have to include this number. You just have to include your dependents. I hope I made that clear here. It's really not line 6. It's actually dependents amount as a dollar. And I want you to get confused on that, because if you put say that the person's single and you put the 6,000 here, you end up getting 7,500 if you add 1,500 to it. That's not what you want to put there. You want to put just the dependent amount, because we're taking care of the other exemption by choosing the filing status over here. It's working with the formulas once you choose that correctly. Notice this is in red because it wants a filing status. It has to do with what state we have put here. And that will make something go red, meaning you need to fill it in. So as soon as you realize all your employees are in Mississippi, it wants an answer for what filing status they are here, okay? So we've put our dependent dollar amount of 1,500. I hope I explained what number goes there. And then the state filing status. You've got, the stuff for the W-4 here, and then you've got workers' comp types or PTO balances and things you can put there if you have that, but I won't get into that in this video. You can really do endless things with this file, but we're just going to go through the basics. So you've basically put in your information. I don't know of any local or city codes in Mississippi, so this is probably can just be hidden, and we don't even see that. So now you've got your employee in. Now you're going to do your daily entry for their hours if you keep track of their hours daily. Some people do it weekly. We're doing a weekly example right now. If you keep them daily, you put the name in and you put the date, type it like, 2/15. You see like 2-15 works also, and it'll fill it in automatically. Don't type the words. Don't start trying to type Thursday. Don't do that. That's not the way it's supposed to happen. It wants to know the amount as a date. And then you can choose the names from your employee list about who it was and how many hours they worked and the type of hour that they worked as well. And if you have them working on projects, there's an area for that, or we could talk about that in another video. So that's how you enter in the daily hours. Now you go over to the pay period record sheet. Pay period record sheet, you can think of this as a sheet that has every single pay period and employee, regardless of whether or not they got a pay stub for that period, but every period, every employee for the whole company. So you've got up to 10 employees in here, but you can have hundreds and it will still work. And they're all listed in order by the way you put them in on the employee sheet. They're listed in the same order. So you have columns that you then use for their actual paycheck record, which is one of these horizontal records. So we have Benny Boom Bop worked 32 regular hours and 2 overtime hours, which you can see that's not right in practice probably, because they would have probably had to work over 40 hours to get any overtime, but you never know. Sometimes there's daily overtime. Actually, that could be the case. Holiday hours, PTO hours that are being used would go there. And then it totals it up for you. And that's all coming from the daily entry sheet. So you did all the daily entries. So now you don't have to do any of this unless you don't want to use the daily entry sheet and you want to do it by week, and you can just type in the number right here for the person's hours for the week. Okay. Tips. I don't think we have tips in the business I'm working with, so we'll get out of that one. But that's for like restaurant stuff or any job where you get gratuities and it's kept separately. It goes in a different spot right here in the daily entry sheet. Now, you put in an hourly rate for the person, and you do have to paste that hourly rate all the way down for every pay period for them if you want to just like preload it with their hourly rate every time, so you don't have to type in the person's $15 or whatever it is. Any bonus or salary amount goes here. Any garnishments like child support, stuff like that goes there. Any reimbursements that are non-taxable, if you're reimbursing your employee for something, goes there. If you want to tie a check number to it, you can tie a check number to it yourself. Then there's a bunch of different deductions depending on how complicated your business is and stuff that it has. And these can be altered to match a different description. If you have one that's slightly different, but has the same tax consequences as one of these, we can override it and change it in the rest of the file to make it exactly what your business needs. Now, all that's done, okay? And I'm going to scroll over to the right, and I left some formula columns. If something's got a dark background, that means it's a formula. So I have some formula columns in here exposed, and I'm going to explain why in a second. So let's go to the pay stub. We now have fully functional pay stubs. Like everything changes. Just choose the employee, choose the pay period, and your pay stub completely changes down here. You can do anything with this pay stub. You can add pictures. You can put your logo. You can do all kinds of stuff to completely customize this and print it out. It will also print on checks if you line it up properly. And you can adjust this. This turns the numbers into words. So you can actually print, if you have a check paper with stub check somewhere, you can move this around and get creative. It's super intuitive to use. You just move it around. You know, if you move it down, you move it down. I don't know if I want to unmerge cells, actually. Probably do. Let's see what happens if you try that. And it still keeps its structure. So you can just grab it and move it to make and change, heights of column, of rows and stuff like that. Whatever you need to do, you've got complete flexibility here. So that's your pay stub. You also have your 941 report, which will give you all your quarterly filing for 941, show what your deposits would be for each month or each pay period, depending on how frequently you have to do that, by simply choosing the month or choosing get rid of the month and then choose just the pay period as well. And it'll show you everything. It'll show you breakdown of all your employees and major tax items for them. And then you have your state report over here. Oops. Your state report over here, same thing. You can look at quarters or months or pay periods or whatever for Mississippi. Then you have W-2s where you just choose the person. It's going to give you their preparation for the W-2 that you have to file at the end of the year on Business Services Online, Social Security's website for doing that. And then you have a dynamic pivot sheet, which is another way of looking at any type of category or piece of financial information in your employee data set of everything here. So you can say, what were my Q1 expenses? You can even get a chart by person. And you can start to see that, like, this Benny Boombop person, 16% of our wages, they're the biggest, the highest paid employee, it looks like, right? You can start to see cool stuff like that. This is endless, what you can do with this by manipulating charts and stuff. So 1099s, if you use them, there's a placeholder to put those as well. Now, you're in the middle of the year and you're like, all right, I need to bring in all my payroll information, Ken. So like you can start entering it in. You really kind of need to enter it in one by one unless you want to prep it and then paste it in this format. But you're probably just going to do it one pay stub at a time to get it in there. Now, what happens when you enter in all your information and you get the hours matching right and you go and then you go look at the pay stub and you're like, wait a minute. On my actual pay stub to Benny Boom Bop, it's not $2,474. It's $2,461. And my state Mississippi tax, instead of 170, 165 was 170 in my version. Notice this turns yellow. It tells you that you typed over a formula of the pay stub. I love that. It's great. Anyway, so you don't want to do that. You don't ever want to do what I just did. But I was showing you an example of how stuff would change. Well, that means that whatever method you used for your Mississippi tax withholding, or potentially your federal withholding as well, because there are alternate methods of withholding and there's rounding errors. There's a bunch of different reasons why it might be slightly off. Well, you can easily fix that. And that is by going over to the column that houses that value that you need to change. So we have a net paycheck column, we have a state tax column, we have a federal tax column. These are the ones where if it was 170, this is where you do that. And this should also turn yellow, honestly, but it doesn't. I will add that in there. The way to do that, I'll show you a really cool trick about how to say, if you have an area that's a formula and you don't want it to be a formula, or you want it to color up as a color, if all of a sudden it becomes a value like we just did, like this is a formula, this is a value, right? And this means, oh, wait a minute, we overrode our formulas. Well, what you do is if you look at what I did in the pay stub, the cool conditional formatting for doing this is if you go to conditional formatting when you're in this pay stub, manage rules. Really? Hold on. I had that right. Where is it? It's this one, right? Watch this. Manage rules. Here's this thing that says, is formula C8 equals false? Yellow. Like what? What that's doing is it's saying, is this cell a formula? And if it's not a formula, make it yellow. So let's go and do that in here to show you how you can identify when you override something. We're going to insert a conditional formatting formula, new rule, use a formula. Right now we're in cell CI4. So equals is formula CI4 equals false. Is there a formula? No, there's not a formula in the cell. Let's make it yellow. Okay. Now, when I type this as 170, yeah, we could also change the font on that. We'll do a couple things now. We're going to make the font supposed to be black. Why is it white? It's weird. It must be, that's weird. It's format. Let's check. Number, font, automatic, but we're going to make it, oh, the automatic. Okay, we'll do that. I think that'll work. And on top of that, we're going to apply this formula to everything in the state tax column. Apply. All right. Now, when you need to type over and it's not going to do it over here because I didn't add the formula to it, but I'll do that change as well. But now you understand how it works. So what you're doing is you're just typing over whatever the amount was that the formula would have withheld with your actual number. If this is 80, it's 80. And everything's going to change. Your pay stub's going to change. As you can see, everything's going to be dynamic. And so you just change state or federal tax numbers if they're slightly off from what you have, because those are the only two that really should be off. If anything else is off, like Social Security or Medicare, you got a problem, because you can't get Social Security or Medicare wrong. Because if you do, you didn't pay the correct percentage. So if that's wrong, you got a different problem. You can obviously still hard code it with your number, but you're going to owe the government, or you're going to be getting a refund from the government, depending on whether you overpaid or underpaid your Social Security and Medicare, which is why I didn't unhide them, because you really shouldn't have to type over them. You get your gross compensation correct, and then you shouldn't have to change anything except potentially these from your new version. Then your net pay number should be right after you update these two. So that is how you slowly but accurately bring in your current payroll information into this file and get it working for the new year. It is one of the least, it's like really the least expensive do-it-yourself solution that's this extensive, that has a complete database of all your employee stuff in any state with any pay period frequency, and any type of withholding, deduction, or compensation strategy. And it's got your reports, and it's got your W-2s, and it's got an extra pivot for people who want to dig into their data and visualize it in other ways. So it's got everything. And it's one of the products, it's the product that I'm probably the most proud of when it comes to what it does for people's lives, because I've had people get in this file for me every year, and they're not, a lot of them not super technically proficient even, and they just love the ease of use of this. It does, if there's an error, if you type over something, if you delete something wrong, it's just stuff shows up in errors, and you're like, oh, Ken, I blew up my file. It's rare, but even if you do it, just you can save versions of the file at the end of every pay period, like email them to yourself or something. Keep a copy of them, because you can always go back to a previous version, and then you probably won't repeat the error you made, or I can fix whatever it is for you in like 5 seconds. All right, so good luck, everyone. Enjoy payroll. It should be easy. Enjoy Mississippi, one of the last states that I remember doing a podcast about. I was just there, not able to drink the water there, from Tunica all the way up to into Memphis, Tennessee. The Mississippi, I mean, good folks, get clean that state up. It can be done. All right, payroll should be easy. We're making it so.